Good afternoon and welcome to Women's Voices 2024. Our conversation today is a partnership between Women's March Fort Myers and National Organization for Women Lee County Chapter. We're excited to have this conversation with some amazing women about their thoughts and experiences and concerns about the upcoming election. We have a lot at stake at this year's election, and I think I can speak for quite a few of us when I say that we're excited, but we're also anxious. And we're going to have a little snippet of some previously recorded videos by local activists and leaders. And then after the videos, we're going to come back and discuss with them and discuss their thoughts. We're going to share this recording also on Saturday, November 2nd, in conjunction with National Women's March efforts. And the video will be posted to our social media platforms as well as Spotify and YouTube. I'm Connie Bennett-MARTIN, president of Fort Myers Women's March. And I would like to extend a thank you to Frank Fear, our vice president, and board member, Amanda Sanat, for all that they have done. They're responsible for the behind the scenes magic today, and it wouldn't have been possible without their time and talent.
I'm Kathy Mayo, and I'm president of Lee County Now. We're so honored to be a part of this project. It's been a fun activity for a lot of us, and a chance to really re-examine what's important in life. Today we're joined by ANNISA, ELENA, and Stephanie. Could each of you please give us a brief introduction of yourself, your background, and anything else we should know about you? Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is ANNISA Karim, and I've lived in Florida since I was 5 years old. That's quite a long time. I'm a proud immigrant, and I came here basically for the same reason that so many other people come here. For hopes and for dreams to make my life better. My parents brought me here. And I have to say that living in such an amazing country gives you a little bit of pause. You see what's going on in the rest of the world and you feel really fortunate. But we are in a watershed moment here in this country. We have the ability to make so much happen for so many people, or we have the ability to take away so much from so many people. And I hope that as human beings, we have the courage to do the right thing and make sure that the weakest among us have the ability to make their hopes and dreams come true. So I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of this very important conversation.
Hello, everybody. I'm Elena Reyes, and I'm a clinical psychologist. I also am an immigrant, although I don't remember it. I grew up in Miami in the 60s, having arrived with my parents when I was 1 year old. The important thing is that I have spent my life working as a clinical psychology with women and children and teaching the healthcare professions, the medical profession, the psychology profession, on how to work with women and children, particularly those that are underserved and first generation immigrants to our country. And of real importance these days is for us to remember, what is the United States? How did the United States start? If it isn't from a number of people coming from all over the world to get together and say, okay, let's get along and let's make the future better for our children. And it is quite surprising to me that sometimes we forget that. And sometimes we forget that not only that's how it started, but it really did get better. And now there's a threat of it going back. And so for all of those young people that maybe don't remember how it was, hopefully our voices will help you to think about what it would be like to go back. Thanks for inviting me and being here.
My name is Stephanie Pavlischak. I am not an immigrant, although I did come to Florida from Michigan about 35, 40 years ago. So grew up in the Midwest and led a very privileged life. Let's just put it that way. I never struggled for anything. never needed anything related to the government. However, about 10, 15 years ago, I became disabled. And from that, it really was an awakening to me as far as what the real world was about. I was very protected and very privileged. And as I started to read the newspapers and experience what the government was doing to us, I was frightened. I became activated because I could just picture my granddaughters growing up in a world that just really didn't agree with what my values were. So that activated me to become a member of the National Organization for Women in Lee County. And I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that women have rights, that people have rights. And that's why I was moved to join this call and become part of this panel and this conversation.
In the previous videos, there was something that ANNISA had said that really rang true to me. Her reason for becoming involved in politics and learning more about all this stuff was because something she heard, and if I say it incorrectly, I'm sorry, but something she heard from the politicians, it just didn't sound right. And we hear things all the time and we're like, I don't know if that really rings true. And that's what, sometimes is that spark that really calls us into action. And like right now, we're hearing a lot about, the economy. And I have heard over and over again about the economy and how rough it is and how bad it is. And I'm like, and yet we're spending more on vacations and we have such a low unemployment rate and things are really not, people have very selective memory about like this economy. And, and I know what in general we're seeking is we're all trying to get that fair and just economic system that kind of values and treats everyone equally. Crazy thought. And, and having something like that fair wealth tax that can help reverse some of the wealth hoarding that's been put the money back to work for the people, and not just a few. There's things that we need, that increased minimum wage, paid paternal leave, those are the small but first steps on an important path to get us to a democratic economy that supports everyone. And, we're working hard to get rid of, the racist voter suppression, gerrymandering. That's a threat of having another insurrection. We really want these to be things of the past, something that are only going to be taught in history books. We want to actually be able to look at history books that have actual history in them. We envision these days without like where the filibuster doesn't exist anymore, because unfortunately it's being abused. And, and we all want to have those equal rights, equal voting rights, be able to control our bodies with reproductive freedom. And I'm really interested to hear from y'all, what do you think that we could do, even on a more local level, state level, to get that more unified economy? Where do y'all see things going?
I personally think we can do two things concurrently. We have to think short term and we have to think long term. Short term is the next 2 weeks. The short term is November 5th, a couple days from now, depending on when you're watching this video. We have to talk to our neighbors. We have to, we have to have the courage. We grew up learning that you don't talk about religion or politics, but this is more than just that. This is about our future. This is about our rights. Politics is about safe streets and making sure you can call 911 and have those cops respond if you need them, right? It's about safety. It's about making sure that your future is well cared for using the tax dollars that you pay. So I think in the short term, we have to be able to take the courage and knock on a couple doors, talk to your neighbors about things that are important to them. Likely, if you live in the same neighborhood, you shop in the same grocery stores, you drive in the same streets, talk about local issues that are important. If you're not comfortable talking about national issues, then don't. But make sure that you start having these conversations. So that's the short term. In the long term, I think we have to educate people, not just the young people. We always talk about educating the young people, and yes, we should, but educate everybody. It wasn't that long ago that women couldn't actually have their own bank account or get their own credit card or get a business loan without having some man vouch for them. That's ridiculous, and it's not that far in the past, right? So we have to educate people and remind them how much better we really did, our lives really are, because of civil rights laws, because of people that had the political will to make sure that they were thinking about equality and equity. So those would be my top two things. You know, think long-term game is education, short-term is have those difficult conversations. And then, you know, maybe talk about the election. Say, you know, I'm going to vote for this congressperson because the one that's in office right now, he talks the talk, but he's not walking the walk. So that would be my advice to the people watching.
Yeah, and I love that. We always talk about, you know, educating the youth, but just recently I had one of my older neighbors knows that I'm involved in a lot of environmental issues, and she reached out to me about an environmental issue that she was concerned with. And I was really surprised because, you know, years ago, I always made that natural assumption that she was a deep R, you know, candidate person. And when she started talking to me, we bridged this huge gap of misconceptions. And we furthered that conversation. She started asking me, you know, well, what about the school board? What do you think about that? And it was great that we were able to kind of soft conversations that were more local, less polarizing. And you know, and she actually told me this year, she's like, you know, I think you might be right on some of these things. I'm like, I love you for that. Thank you. But you know, it's learning that we do have so many things that we're very much alike, and we have to have these conversations, and it does bridge a gap so that we can have even bigger conversations. And who knows, maybe come election day, maybe she'll let me take her to the polls. On that.
Yep. Hi, this is Stephanie. I just wanted to mention, first of all, I like what you said about talking to our neighbors and things like that. I am very left leaning, I think, when it comes to my political views, but I am part of a family that I married into that is very right leaning. And, you know, there used to be a lot of screaming matches with the generation before me where they would just get into really volatile conversations, and it would remind me of a college sports rivalry. Last night, you know, in Michigan, they had the Michigan State game, and you know, people were yelling at each other about the teams. And I feel sometimes that that's the way we do with politics. You know, we get so focused on, well, I'm a Democrat and I'm a Republican, so you're both not, you know, we're neither one of you are right. And this is really, but by looking at the issues instead, talking to your neighbor about, you know, whether it's the environment or whether it's about reproductive justice or, you know, whatever it is that's really got you going, you know, what you're knowledgeable about. Not focusing on the candidates, but focusing on the issue gives you an opportunity to connect with people that maybe you didn't connect with before. And even if you don't change a vote, I feel like that connection maybe activates somebody for a future vote. And why not put in the time to do that? I think the world would be a better place.
I was going to say that sometimes when we have those conversations, we're so hyper focused as a society on the small titles of whatever the topic is. So reproductive rights or abortion, that we forget the extent of what is at stake here in terms of the general women's health and families' health. The fact that, you know, if a woman dies because a doctor can't treat her early on with her symptoms, there's going to be a husband that's going to be impacted by her death. There's going to be other children that might be left behind. There's a whole family. So I think that we have to start, when we start talking to people, start defining what we're talking about. Because when we say, you know, there's a right to an abortion or reproductive rights, we forget that everybody has a sister, a mom, a wife that could get cervical cancer and has to have early prevention in order for that to happen. So I think that because we have become so polarized, we have these little key terms that everybody uses that we have to start being a little bit more mindful of how we describe what we're talking about.
One of the things that has surprised me is how people respond when you wear your Harris t-shirt or buttons. And I have started wearing my shirts a lot more. And I was at Home Depot this week, and one of the workers came up to me and he sort of whispered, "You sure you want to wear that shirt in here?" And I'm thinking, wow. I said, "Oh, of course, this is exactly the right place to wear it." And he was saying that he's often uncomfortable in certain environments, looking like he might have a different view than some of the folks who were there. And, I don't know what to say to that, but I've started consciously wearing buttons and shirts just so that I can have those conversations. Because people come up to you, I can't tell you how many times folks have said, "Oh, I love your shirt. Where did you get that? How can I get that?" And so I've started having a car full of signs and buttons and that I can give away. But it does help open the door. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Annisa.
It's interesting, Kathy, because I'm certainly, I have my mind made up on who I'm voting for. In every office, I have my mind made up how I'm voting on every amendment. And not everybody agrees with me. And that is clear, living in Southwest Florida. But I have friends who are on the other side of the aisle or other side of the spectrum, and they express the same kind of uncomfortable feeling about wearing paraphernalia from their candidates, their candidates camp. So I think it happens to everybody. And Stephanie, you made a really good point. You made a really interesting point, like when we say, well, I'm a Democrat and you're Republican, so we don't agree on anything, or, your side is right or wrong and my side is right, or however it is. That's unfortunately, that's human nature. But we know that in the state of Florida, when and we've seen this over the last few years, right? Decades, actually, when we vote on issues, it turns out that most of the state votes one way. You think about Amendment 1 in 2014, how most people, an overwhelming majority of people in the state of Florida voted for land conservation. That was Democrats and Republicans, right? That was Independents, that was Green Party, that was Pirate Party, right? That was everybody, 75% of every voter in the state of Florida, everybody that decided to vote in 2014, voted to protect our land and water. And that was nonpartisan. And that brings up another point. We have an issue, a very important issue on our ballots this year, Amendment 1, which would pretty much make our school boards partisan. And, that to me is unconscionable, because believe it or not, I have voted for people on the other side of the aisle that are running for school board because I think they would make fantastic school board members. And then as I watch them through their term, they've been fantastic school board members. And so I am supporting them again. And so their political party affiliation, to me, especially when it comes to school board, doesn't make a lot of sense to know. It really doesn't. The scary thing about Amendment 1, of course, is that Florida is a closed primary state. So once you introduce this idea of partisan politics into school boards, you can actually disenfranchise millions and millions of people. You have to be either a Democrat or a Republican to even have a chance in many counties to hope to vote for your school board. And that's kind of shady, right? That's shady. And so this is what our legislature has done. That was an amendment that was introduced by our legislature because they have a very specific viewpoint on who should be in office. And our elected officials should not be able to pick their voters. Our voters should be able to pick our elected officials. So Amendment 1, in my eyes, is so underhanded and just totally disrespects voters. And so I hope that the people that are watching this will do their research, and I hope that you will see how horrible Amendment 1 would be to the state of Florida. I hope that you would vote no on Amendment 1.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, because I'm like, when I sit there and look at the fact that somebody can be hired for a position just because of basically because of their party affiliation and because of the money that's behind them. But the people that are qualified, the people that should be there, maybe can't raise enough funds to compete with somebody who's his or her party is giving, here's a $50,000 check, here's a $100,000 check, and somebody who is very qualified might be having that $2,000 or $3,000 coming in. And it's like, this is so important for us to know the facts behind people, not their party affiliation. It's about educating our children as a whole and being able to give what's best for them as a whole, and not having one party and it becoming a monopoly, because that's the direction we could head. And what's scary on both ends of it is it could be either way. And, it could, the people that are wanting it to be this way one day might be turning around going, wow, I did not know that that Florida was gonna flip, and now they're gonna be flipping. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, we need to be able to vote for the people for what they do and what their qualifications are, not just whether it's an R or a D. And, along the lines of that, as Elena had said in her video about fighting for women's rights, and she was talking about it because you fight for the rights, not because you had your rights violated, but because we need to fight for the rights of our sisters. And I'm paraphrasing what she said, but it was something along that lines. And, and this is that whole getting to know your neighbors and getting to know, the people that have been marginalized. Like you said, there's going to be a huge group of people that are going to be almost instantly disenfranchised in the education system if we go this route. And, Amendment 1 is huge. And I am hoping that the voters vote their conscience and vote for, and know what's tricky is knowing what these amendments are is simply not by their title, because like Amendment 2 is the right to hunt and fish, which sounds great. But we already have the right to hunt and fish. This is entirely not the right to hunt and fish. And it's unfortunate the way the conversation, the narrative gets manipulated, and then voters, if they don't do their research, just don't know.
Well, I'm curious what some of our presenters thought about Amendment 4 and the discussion, because it started out as being a rather simple issue, whether we ban abortion or not. But the conversation, because of the vast amounts of money that have gone into this and everything else, has brought up so many related issues. I feel like as a 76-year-old woman, I didn't know enough about the medical implications around pregnancy and related situations. And I've come out the other end thinking abortion is such a unique condition. It's a situation that's so unique that who am I to second guess someone else? And I don't want them second guessing me either. But what do you all think? What has that discussion done for you? Because it's certainly been well paid for on TV and every place we go, and very extreme issues, just like that.
So I've been teaching in medical schools for 40 years and the healthcare profession. And some people don't think about some of the basics of the way this is done, that if you have physicians who are fearing for their license, we are going to have less OB-GYNs. That means that in general, women's health is at stake here if we don't have people that know how to take care of women. And it even means that even if you do want that baby, there are not enough people there to monitor your pregnancy so that you can have healthy babies. And it also means that with this landscape, doctors in training are saying, maybe I don't want to be an OB-GYN. This is too risky a profession. I owe too much money for having gone to medical school to get my license taken away. And if you do that, you also don't have enough physicians to train the medical students to be able to carry on the different procedures. So there's a whole cascade. And when people think about this, they think about abortion. But it is so much more in terms of the implications that this has for the profession in general, and women who don't have money and can't go to specialized care and go to community health centers for their care. And then community health centers are tied to the federal monies and what can be said and cannot be said to a woman in a difficult pregnancy. So there's a whole ripple effect that people really don't think about when, they think about, well, it's a baby's life forever that you're taking away. Without thinking of all of the implications that it means for women's health and for the couple. I mean, again, it's not just the woman, it's the couple, and for the children. And again, as a psychologist with child trauma as a background, many a kid that I have seen that has been through abusive situations with a father, with a cousin, with a whatever, and now they're 13 or 14 and pregnant. And so, you're now destroying a lot of lives by not allowing for this child and doctor to really come to terms with what's the best thing for her and her future and her health. So yes, Kathy, there's this ripple effect that people really just don't think about.
Today's news press, I thought it was interesting that they had this interesting article, because we don't always think of abortion in terms of young girls being abused and what the impacts of all this is. So I just throw that out because I was very proud of them today that they ran.
It is a definite issue. And it's an issue across the country because abuse happens across all socioeconomic lines, across all ethnicities, everywhere. And 13-year-olds having babies not because they wanted or were sexually promiscuous in their middle school, but rather because dad raped them or brother or something. That's a reality. I mean, it's a reality. It's an ugly reality that we don't talk about because who wants to talk about that? But that is life, that happens on a regular basis. And to not have some recourse for that child is devastating.
I think also, as I mentioned, I spent a lot of time talking to Republican voters, just because of the people that I'm surrounded by. And I can tell you one of the biggest misunderstandings is that abortion is simply a lazy person's way to take care of birth control. And so many people are not aware that it is part of healthcare. There are life-saving procedures that are taking place while you are having an abortion. And, you start talking to them and they start at the beginning saying, no, abortion is bad. It's wrong. You shouldn't have it. And slowly, as you talk to them, you start to unpeel and think that, oh, they think people are just promiscuous and this is birth control, and maybe women should keep their legs crossed or whatever the sayings go. But when I explain to them what happens to a person when they have a miscarriage, or something goes wrong, and as I was advocating for amendment for during this voting season, and and dealing with my own trauma and things that have happened to me around this issue. My niece had a miscarriage, and thankfully she lived in New York and she was able to get the life-saving care that she needed. And the baby was gone, but she was able to access that care. And my gosh, what would have happened had she been in Texas or in Florida? What's happening? And Elena, you mentioned the thing about the doctors. That is happening already across the country in these extreme abortion states. We're getting deserts. We're getting healthcare deserts where hospitals are closing and birthing suites are closing. And we're going to start losing even more babies and more women because of these extreme beliefs. And I struggle with how to continue to explain to people. It's a constant battle.
Stephanie, you said something just now that kind of rang true to me, these extreme beliefs, and it is a belief, right? And some people base their opinion on this issue on their very own religion, right? And we know that in the United States of America, still, we have freedom to practice the religion we choose without government interference. And we have the right not to practice any religion at all, right? And this is, Amendment 4 essentially is the government interfering in your beliefs, because there is more than one belief on this, right? There are some religions that actually say that if the life of the mother is at stake, that abortion is absolutely okay. There are other religions that don't even mention this. The decision is left up to the woman and her family. And so when we talk about Amendment 4 and we talk about beliefs, I think it's really important to mention that this goes against, banning abortion goes against so many people's beliefs and religion that it will undoubtedly be in the courts very, very soon if Amendment 4 fails. So, I think that it bears repeating Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She said the decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a woman's life, to her well-being, and to her dignity. And it's a decision she must make for herself. And when the government controls that decision for her, she is being treated as less than a full adult human responsible for her own choices. So, at the very beginning, I talked about, hey, we couldn't even have our own credit cards or our own bank accounts not too many years ago. This is yet another step back, a huge step back, right? And so I think that these are things that we have to be able to speak to people about. It is such an important decision in a family's life, in a woman's life, to be able to make this decision that is best for them, and to have the government or some politicians, some flippant politicians, make this decision is horrible. And I'll say one last thing about this. This is a classist amendment. People who have money, who have friends or family that can afford to fly somewhere else and have abortions, this amendment doesn't matter to them, because regardless of what happens, if someone they love needs an abortion, she will get that abortion, right? If she needs that health care, she will get it. People who cannot travel because they have to make it to work or care for someone in their family, or they simply just don't have the money to leave, they will have to have that baby and potentially risk their own life. So this is a classist amendment. It is disgusting, or rather, if this amendment doesn't pass, it's classist. So a yes on 4 is critical for so many reasons. It's more than just healthcare, which is huge, obviously, but it's more than just healthcare. It is huge in the lives of women and their families. And I hope that everyone watching this will really go to the polls and vote yes on 4.
Yeah, and and those extremists, they're busy passing these abortion bans and abusing the existing laws. And one of the things that they're also doing is, though, those that are seeking abortion, their loved ones can be penalized for helping them. The doctors, the healthcare providers, they're saying that, oh, okay, well, anyone can be harmed for even not helping them even get the abortion, but gaining access to the abortion pills, or simply sharing information with them on how to get an abortion.
Or an Uber driver or a Lyft driver taking them somewhere. That's extreme.
Yeah, it's extremists. And it's like, and these extremists, they're harming, like you said, they're the people that are being affected most is our most marginalized groups. And they're already being targeted by law enforcement, and in Florida and in Texas, we've got women that are being denied their healthcare rights, left and right. And if these women don't show up at the polls, in the future, we all can be denied our rights. Right now, Trump and the RNC, they've got 220,000 poll workers and poll watchers and lawyers that are showing at polls in an effort to proactively claim that their election is rigged or was unfair. And, we have to do our part. The best thing we can do is walk past them. And as you say, your vote is your voice, and use it. And, and helping those that might feel marginalized, might not feel that they can, get past some of these poll workers, helping them go and being able to cast their vote.
But think about what you just said. We're in the United States. How can somebody be fearful of approaching a polling station? How can somebody be fearful of what somebody's going to say to them? I mean, we've been known to send, watchers around the world for elections. And here we are afraid in our own country, to go to the polls. I mean, that's if people really stop and think about that, the essence of the United States and the essence of what we should be teaching our children in the United States is, I don't know about you folks, but I would, and sometimes this is an immigrant thing, but when my kids were little, every 4 years, they get dragged to the voting station. And then they'd get my speech about it. If it wasn't, this is why we're here, because, we did not have this right where we came from, and your grandparents made a lot of sacrifices to get us here so that we would have this right. So therefore, it is your responsibility when you turn 18. And that was kind of like, at 16, you get your driver's license. At 18, you got taken over to get your voter's registration. But I think that, it's our responsibility as parents, right? Because it's our responsibility to the country that so many people just take for granted. And I always say Rome fell. And we have to be cognizant of this. It's not just one issue of environment or of women's health. It's the issue of democracy that's at stake, that we need to keep just saying that, reminding people of this. We can't take it for granted.
One of the very important rights that we have is keeping our votes anonymous. So when we go to the polls, no one knows. Everybody knows if you voted or not, but no one knows who you voted for. And so people that are trying to intimidate you before you go to the polls, just look at them and be like, you don't have to worry about me. And then you go in and you do the right thing. No one can find out who you voted for. So that's another thing that's important to know. Fight that fear on the way to the polls and vote the way your heart tells you to vote, because no one will know how you voted. They just count that as an anonymous tally for one side or the other. So do it, because if you think you're afraid now, just wait. If some of these things, if Amendment 4 fails, there's going to be a lot more fear for a lot more people that don't have a voice right now.
Absolutely. In closing, I just kind of want all of us to kind of just take a moment if you have something else you want to add before we wrap up, because we're coming up on almost 45 minutes of some very passionate people feeling very passionate about getting out there and getting our vote and getting our voices heard. If you have something else, please go ahead and hop in, and then we'll close today out.
I guess there's one more thing that I always said. I had an incident in graduate school with some sexual harassment by a professor. My major professor said to me, you tell him that you can call him by his first name the day that he doesn't have a grade book in front of him. And so that kind of a power struggle that is always there, I think that for women, we have to remember those that are not in the boardrooms, those that are not in the classroom, that are not in the conference room making the decisions and with the grade books, that it's our responsibility to represent the women that are not there, that don't have a voice when any issue comes up. Go out and vote.
I do want to say one last thing. I want to address Amendment 2 very, very quickly. Amendment 2 is another one of those things that the legislature put on there because special interests asked them to put them on. And it is a horrible, horrible amendment. It actually is titled horribly, the right to fish and hunt. We already have that, as Connie said. This is an attempt to enshrine cruel ways of hunting and possibly even bringing back ways to commercially fish for things that are not supposed to be fished for. So look at Amendment 2 very carefully. I hope that you will vote no on Amendment 2. But if you're unsure, look at the people that are for and against Amendment 2 and read all about it. Because if you love the environment like I do, I'm a wildlife ecologist. I absolutely love I love the flora and fauna of the state of Florida, and I understand that there is a place for hunting. And by the way, we already have the right to fish and hunt in the state of Florida. So Amendment 2 is kind of another one of these underhanded things. But either way, I hope that you look into your ballot. Go to your supervisor of elections website, look at a sample ballot, make sure you know every office on that ballot and vote, because you'll be voting for more than just the president of the United States. You'll be voting for a member of Congress. You might be voting for school board, depending on where you live. You'll be voting for or against judges. So these are all very, very important votes. And go to a friend that you trust. If you know me, call me, and I will be happy to share my very the people and the issues that I hope that you vote for. So get out there and vote. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this. I really appreciate it.
I agree with both of you. You know, as you said, we're going to go out, we're going to vote. And that is a form of participating in our democracy, which is very important. And I would just encourage you to kind of pay attention to what the billionaires are thinking right now. And, you know, what are they angry about? What are they afraid of? And if you feel the opposite way, then you're on the right track. We're not billionaires, and we've got to vote for not only ourselves, for the people that need more help than us. So, and I concur. Thank you so much for including me in this call today, and I look forward to more of these. Thank you.
All right. Well, I have to tell you, women across the country, we are coming together. We're mobilizing the women's vote. Defeating Trump at the ballot box is going to come down to the power of women. And as women, we've had enough. And we're going to send that message clear come November 5th. So we are telegraphing that message. We will not go back. We will not surrender our rights. We will not be submissive to those that disregard our autonomy. And we are showing up. So women showed up in force on day one of Trump's presidency for the first Women's March. Keep that in mind, because Trump's presidency began with women taking to the street. And that, my friends, is how we're going to end with. So today, I thank all of our brave panelists for showing up with us. Thank you to the board members of Women's March Fort Myers and Lee Now. And thank you all for tuning in, being vigilant, and voting to save our democracy. Thank you.